romantics. We have been following this playlist on the channel. I hope you've been following it too. I bring to you today another piece by Wordsworth. When I took this piece, one thing occurred to me, that in one of the earlier videos, please go and watch the earlier videos from the playlist because I've explained what the romantic movement in poetry is. So in one of the earlier videos, when I'm speaking of romantic poetry, I have given you a certain definition of it, a certain explanation of it. And when I was choosing this piece by Wordsworth, it's a very famous piece, I felt that this piece to an extent did not really confer with the definition that we have been discussing about romantic poetry. Why? Well, we discussed that romantic poetry is where it is not necessary that we speak of the love between human beings, but we are actually speaking of the love that the poet feels for his or her muse. And we also discussed that in the aftermath of the French Revolution, a lot of English poets were trying to see what was beautiful in the world, what was there worth appreciating, rather than speaking of revolution and war all the time. But this is a poem written by a poet who's perhaps tired of this romanticism, who's perhaps had enough of this romanticism. And this is also a poem which is philosophical in nature. So what I will do is I will first give you a gist of the poem, then I will go through the poem line by line, explaining each line to you, and finally I will tell you how this poem compares to the other works of Wordsworth. So to give you the gist, the poem is basically saying that I find it very difficult to deal with this world sometimes. Existence at times seems to be too heavy a load to bear, and what should I do in those circumstances? Sometimes he wishes that it would have been really great had I not been born to a civilization. There was no such great weight of history or religion upon me, and there was no weight of the fact that I have a certain profession, or I have a duty towards my readers, or whatever the concerns of the world that we can imagine are weighing upon the poet, and he is then expressing this weight. That is basically the gist of the poem, and that is evident in the title, "The world is too much with us." The world is too much with us, late and soon, getting and spending. We lay waste our powers, little we see in nature that is ours. The world is too much with us. I am really tired of this world. It somehow seems like a place where I can't seem to find a balance that I need to. And then he says, late and soon, getting and spending. So this world is all about gaining things, whether in terms, you can speak material terms, we are earning our existence, but we are spending money as well. Or you can speak in very philosophical terms, that there is karma, we accumulate, and deeds that we do. So it's getting and spending. And then we waste our powers. He says that all of this is not coming to some very decided or very calculated or very wanted end. We are wasting our powers. Little we see in nature that is ours. Very little do we see in nature that belongs to us, that truly is ours. I would like to comment upon this phrase, is ours. This is not merely to say that we possess something. This is basically to say that if we work so hard, we try to understand something, we try to be good at something, why is it that the world doesn't become so predictable for us? Every time, anew we have to rethink, anew we have to re-evolve our notions. Or even if we become great experts in playing a game, in playing the music, every concert, every single match that we play is again a test of our capabilities. So my powers are not for me to keep. Anything that I get from the world is not for me to keep. Little we see in nature, that is ours. So we never really get a hold on nature, not only in possessing it, but in ways that I can predict my future, or in ways that if I acquire something, I acquire it for good. No, we constantly have to keep acquiring it again and again. Why is this so? Look at the next part now. We have given our hearts away, a sordid boon, the sea that bears her bosom to the moon, the winds that will be howling at all hours and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. So he says, we have given our hearts away, a sordid boon. He accepts that we cannot really call anything in nature to be ours forever, but at the same time we have given our heart away to this nature, and this is now become a sordid boon. It is in this line that I see that the romantic in him is a little tired. He's saying that I have loved enough, I've spoken enough of daffodils, I've spoken enough of women that I have loved, I've spoken enough of maybe a beautiful vision that I saw. One piece we did upon the Westminster Bridge, he's standing and looking at London sleeping. So he says that I have given my heart too much away and it's become a sordid boon now. Sordid, something which is not very pleasant any longer, and it's become a very sordid boon now. Boon that yes, we are blessed with it. See, this is a juxtaposition in this poem which is very important. He's calling it a boon. We are blessed with the ability to appreciate. But he says that this has become a sordid boon for me, that it is not any more pleasant to think of it as this thing, as a blessing. Rather, I'm tired. I'm really, really tired. I've given my heart away to my nature, and yet there is nothing in nature that could be ours forever. The sea that bears her bosom to the moon. And here, if you look at the imagery is that he's imagining that sea as a person is lying on its back and it's facing the moon. So basically, he's personifying the ocean, saying that it's lying on its back, it's facing the moon, and the winds that will be howling at all hours and are upgathered now like sleeping flowers. So he's talking about all that beauty or all that nature that exists around us, the sea, the moon, the winds that are howling, or sometimes they're asleep but then suddenly they'll get up, be awake and blow in our face. For this, for everything, we're out of tune. He speaks of nature in terms of the sea, the winds and the flowers and the moon, but he says there is something because of which we're out of tune. Why? Because he said earlier that nothing in nature is for ours to keep. We have to keep trying to keep acquiring. This life is a struggle anew each day. And here he says that yes, the nature is beautiful around us, but there is something amiss. We are not in tune, we are not in balance, we are somehow not invited to the truth of the world. The doors for this truth, the doors for what this nature truly holds at its core, they are shut for us. And this line represents this. For this and for everything, we are out of tune, it moves us not. Now it's moving me not. And this is a romantic poet saying it. So that is very surprising for me, because he says, now it moves me not. This is a poet who was completely taken away and taken into awe with the beauty of the daffodils. This is a poet who could comment upon the setting sun or the seasons or the birds, and he's here saying that all these things in nature, they do not move us. Enough, I've had enough. Great God, I'd rather be a pagan suckled in a creed outworn. A pagan? Pagan is someone who does not believe in God, Nastik जिसे हम हिंदी में बोलते हैं. And he says, was there a possibility that I did not belong to this grand civilization with its gods and its religious orders? Is there a possibility that I belong to a pagan creed? A creed that still did not have a god called the Christ, and perhaps I could just belong to it and did not have so much of understanding of the world, could not have the ability to appreciate the world? Was this possible? So he's saying that maybe I should just be a pagan, suckled in a creed outworn. Suckling basically is when a baby drinks its mother's milk, but here he's saying that I would be brought up in this creed outworn. So might I, standing on this present lea, have glimpses that would make me less forlorn. Lea is a meadow or a grassland, and he's saying that had I been in this pagan creed, perhaps if I looked at this vision, it would make me less forlorn. Less forlorn means less sad. Now, the poet is very sad, we have seen here. Why is he saying that if he were a pagan standing on this meadow, then this scene would make him less sad? The scene in nature is making him sad because he said in his earlier lines that we have a boon. What is that boon? That we can appreciate nature. And yet when we appreciate her, we understand her, we capture her in our words, or some scientist tries to capture her ways in the way he provides things for the upliftment of human life, or a philosopher tries to understand nature, or a medical practitioner tries to understand nature and thereby make medicines for the diseases that afflict us. All these things, we have been given a boon to understand nature, but it's a sordid boon, because no matter how hard an artist, a poet, a medical practitioner, whoever, no matter how hard we try, we can never gain total control. Something is amiss, little we see in nature that is ours. This is what he said. And therefore he says that if I did not belong to such an evolved civilization where the arts and the sciences and the philosophies were so developed, then I would feel less sad. I'm feeling very sad because I belong to a civilization that has amassed so much knowledge, it has amassed so much sensitivity in terms of the arts, and yet it does not have control over nature. So he basically says, had I been that pagan in some creed outworn and not belonging to civilization, and I had been on this grassland looking over this vision, it would make me less sad. Now look at the last two lines. I'll have sight of Proteus rising from the sea, or hear old Triton blow his wreathed horn. So he's saying, this is a reference to Greek mythology, that I would see Proteus rising from the sea, or perhaps I'll see Triton. Triton is the son of the sea god, and I would see him and he'd be blowing his horn. This is also a reference to the fact that the creeds believed in religions, or believed in, not religions actually, but perhaps he's referring to such creeds which believed in entities to be divine, which did not have the nature that we accord to present day gods like Christ or like the Indian gods. So he's saying this creed perhaps would have treated elements of nature as God, and that is why he takes both his references from mythology, Proteus and Triton, that I would have believed in animism, that you believe in basically a tree being a god, a sea being a god, or winds being gods, and therefore that would have been much nicer. It is that we know so much that we know that we don't know enough. That is basically the crux of the poem. And I would think when he says the world is too much with us, that is the first line of the poem, perhaps a better title would have been I've had enough, because that is the tone of the poem. So this is William Wordsworth in The World is Too Much With Us. And like I said, that how it differs from his earlier poems is that Daffodils is really something that he completely is in awe or is in love with this beautiful field of flowers that he sees. His Lucy poems are about a woman that he falls in love with, a countryside woman, and she's a phantom of delight. Another poem devoted to womanhood and to someone who's a mother figure or a wife figure in a family upon Westminster Bridge in praise of the city of London and its beauty. So all these things are truly romantic poems at their heart. This poem in his Ouvert to me presents something which is very different from the rest of his poems, because here somewhere he feels that though I know what the world is, I really do not know enough to call myself an expert or to feel that I have hold over nature. The world is too much with us. Keep following our Romantics playlist. Thank you.